Everybody, this is Mike, and welcome to Recovery as Possible with Mike and Lillie. And tonight I have Lillie joining me.
Hi, everyone.
And we wanted to talk about a statement that I heard this last week that I thought was so appropriate to the discussion that we're going to have tonight, and that is addiction is the only disease where you come out the other side better than when you started. That's the only disease out there where you're actually better off than when you started. And that just hit me between the eyes. And I just thought, wow, that is so true. And I just wanted to throw that out there tonight and talk to you all about it and explain to you why that is, because you think, you got to be kidding me. You know, are you thankful that you're an addict? Are you thankful that this has happened to you? Well, the fact is, and I'm going to throw this out and I'll turn it over to you, Lillie. The fact is, I can tell you that today, I actually think I'm a better person and I'm better off, and in some ways almost grateful that I was afflicted with the disease of addiction. Does that sound weird to you, Lillie?
That does, especially when you were in the throes of your addiction, and I recall what it was like. So that is, I think that when you're looking back in time, it might be something that you're able to do, but then, I could hear you make that statement and understand that. But when you're in your throes of your current addiction, that's very difficult to appreciate nor understand it.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, I want you, let's really just sort of analyze this entire statement. Addiction is the only disease where you are better off having had it than when you started. Okay. So you are absolutely correct. When you are in the midst of your addiction, it is horrific. And those of you that are listening to us here tonight understand that. In fact, we have this week, well, I work with people every single day that are going through this, and it's sad to hear the families when they call, because they think that we can wave a magic wand and fix their loved one and they'll be done with it, and it doesn't work that way. And unfortunately, the data shows us that more people will not get well than will get well. But tonight, what I'm talking about are those that get well. And for those of you that are suffering, you can kind of look forward to this. So tonight's topic, we're looking forward into the end result, which is long-term recovery. And this is assuming that you get there. And for those of you that are listening that are still struggling, this is what you have to look forward, God willing, that you get well on the other end. But this is something that you can strive for. Now, let's again break this down. Addiction is the only disease where you are better on the other end of it than when you started. So let me just kind of give you sort of what that means to me and why I say that. In my own life, I can tell you that prior to getting into recovery, I thought I was a good guy. Prior to getting sober, I thought I was a believer, and by believer, for those of you that may not be familiar with that term, I mean, I consider myself a religious guy. I've always considered myself a religious guy. Maybe you don't, but the fact is I did and do, okay? But I'll address that here in a second. When it comes to intellectual development, I thought I was a pretty intellectual guy. When it comes to being a husband, being a father, lots of different things, I thought I was doing a pretty good job. Being an employee, being reliable, being dependable, being trustworthy. I thought I was all those things. But I got to tell you, Lillie, that in recovery, where I thought I wasn't even close to where I believe that I am now. And I am now at a place that it is far better and greater than I could have imagined when I was in the throes of my addiction. Let's just take my spiritual life. I mentioned that. Again, I'm someone that believes in God. I believe that my relationship with God, I believe my knowledge of God, I believe my desire to know God, I believe everything about my spiritual life is well beyond where it was coming into recovery. Well beyond that. In fact, I couldn't even imagine where it would have been. When it comes to being dependable as an employee, I believe I work much harder. I think I'm a better employee. I'm more productive. I'm more reliable. I think as far as being a friend, being a father, I am much better at doing that. You know, I am all these years later, and I have children that want to talk to me. Both of my children are adults. They want to talk to me. They communicate with me nearly daily. I would like to think that my marriage is much better than it could have ever been. Now, Lillie, you can come on here and maybe disagree with that, but I feel like I'm just in a much better place. And I think it's beyond where I would have been had this not happened, because I'm much more aware of this. And we'll talk about being in recovery, how and why it is that you're more aware of these things and how you are better at these types of things. But give me your thought. I mean, you've been watching me all of these years. This year in August, we will have been married 37 years, and we're about 13 and a half years now sober, and many of those years were my drinking years. So you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. Like, where do you think that we are now, and where do you think we would have been if I had not stopped drinking? You know, what are your thoughts on that? Because you were the observer to it.
Well, I think that if you had not gotten sober, I don't think that you would be here today.
No, I'd probably be dead. Yeah.
Right. So I think that everything that you do or have done from the time you got sober, is a blessing, right? Is a gift. Because I know that at the time that you were still in the throes of your addiction, I was already preparing to, I was already in the planning stages of what would life be without you. So you weren't in my future. So I wasn't even planning for you to be a part of it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you're that many years in advance, I think that when you're living with someone who has an addiction that is not cured, it's only in remission, that because we teach in the program, especially in Al-Anon, to take one day at a time, there's an element of not taking things for granted and not projecting out too far into the future. So, I'm a long-range planner, so I think that I can plan, but at the same time plan with the idea that it can be changed. So I'm still thankful for you being in recovery, but there's also, I wouldn't say it's a sadness, but there's an element. I mean, even if you didn't have an addiction, I think all of us know that life is precious. And so you can drive every day to work and you may not make it home, right? You could be in a car accident, you could be on an airplane, and you can go down for some reason. And so I think that for me, the whole adage of one day at a time is, I'm extremely grateful that you're alive. I'm extremely grateful that every day is a day that we get to be together. But because I've gone through this hard life with you in the throes of your addiction, I actually don't take things for granted, because I can't take life for granted, if that makes sense.
Well, do you think, in observing me in those areas as a husband, as a father, as a believer, as an employee, do you think that I'm better than where I was at that point? Because that's, again, the statement is, addiction is the only disease where we are better off having had the disease. Do you think that coming into recovery, it gave me sort of an awareness that was not present prior to getting into recovery? Because that's really what the statement, that's the connotation of that statement is that, okay, let me just say this. Forget about addiction. Let's say there was no addiction, right? Say that it had never happened. So I would have been on a trajectory, career-wise, marriage-wise, as a parent, those types of things. And if there was no addiction, do you think I would have plateaued out? Or do you think that having gone through addiction and having gone through the self-realization that recovery requires of you, do you think that brought me to a different level than where I would have been had this not happened at all?
So that's a very interesting point, Mike, because we can't predict the future. However, because of the fact that you've been in recovery, I think that the addiction itself has brought out of both of us a like a, like a calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
A part of your life that you are nowhere near, maybe because nowhere near I would have thought we would have been maybe, before. Like at the time, we met in college, and then you were in the military, and then you did the whole military thing, went into the FBI, but then post FBI, because you got into recovery while you were still, let's see, wait a minute, you got out of recovery. I mean, I'm sorry, you were in recovery before you got out of the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
But even before you got out of the FBI, our lives were changing as far as the trajectory of where you felt called in terms of your profession and where you would focus your attention on, right? So because of the addiction and because you're in AA and I'm in Al-Anon, there is a lot of introspection, a lot of self-awareness, finding out what it is that motivates you, what provides passion in you.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that sometimes individuals who grow up in life kind of follow this trajectory where it's, I'm doing something because I'm in this path. But with what's been happening with us over the last 13 years, there's an enrichment, there's it's certainly better than what I envisioned it would be in the past. And it's a good thing, because I think that the path that we've taken is one where it's not just helping us anymore. We're helping other people along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And if you think about what the distinction is, and when you think of the statement, addiction is the only disease where you're better off on the other side than where you had started, that's probably the putting the finger on it right there. And that is, we go from the I statements to the we statements, from me to you type of statements. Like you said, minus addiction, I think that my career trajectory, I think the focus was on, I want to get ahead. I want to move. Because I knew, I was in the Navy, then I went in the police department, then the FBI, and, I had sort of my vision of where I wanted to go in that. But it was really about me. It was about that vision. It was about me. How do I get ahead? How do I get the next job? How do I get the job that I want? Me. Addiction recovery changes all of that. There's a metaphysical change. There's a spiritual change. And there's a less focus on yourself and more focus on others. And instead of me talking about how I'm going to get ahead in my career, how I'm going to get the next job, then you start thinking about, how am I going to serve the next person that is suffering? How can I serve the nation? How can I serve my community? How can I serve my family? How can I serve? Period. Those are the constant thoughts. What can I do for someone else? And I think that that's a monumental shift. It sounds basic, it sounds very simple, but it's really not, because if you think about it, most people that you know, and if you're listening to this, maybe this is how you're thinking right now, and ask yourself, is everything that you do every day based on you? Is it based on what is it that I want? Or are you waking up every day asking yourself, what can I do to help other people? What can I do to help the community? What can I do to help the country? Because that's when you know that you're starting to have recovery thinking, when you're thinking about others. That's probably the biggest shift that occurs. And frankly, most people never get there. And I'm not talking about people that are addicted. I'm talking about people, everybody. I don't think most people ever get to the point to where they realize that their purpose on earth is to serve other people. What do you think about that?
Well, because as you were saying that, you made me think, so I'm going to ask you a question. Do you believe that only a person, well, let me rephrase that, because I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Are you saying that all people who are in recovery are others centered? You don't think that there's somebody who could be in recovery and still be thinking of only themselves?
Well, there's degrees. I mean, absolutely the goal of recovery is to be thinking of others all the time. But people are people, humans are humans. And remember, people are at different phases of their own recovery. I've often believed this, that there is a 5-year cycle to recovery. And I want you to just visualize this. And if you're listening, I want you to visualize this. Long-term recovery, from the medical definition, is actually 5 years. 5 years. In the 5 years, I believe, and I've observed this over lots of meetings and seeing a lot of people, and I've heard people talk about this, other people talk about this at meetings too. Your first year of recovery, first year, you should be focused on the physical part of it, the physiological and the physical part of it, meaning getting your brain and your body to heal, because you've done a lot of damage with alcohol, with drugs. A lot of damage needs to be healed. Neuropathways, the B series of vitamins, GABA, melatonin, all these different things need to just take care of themselves. And so you got to repair the damage. Then in the second year, what you're going to be doing is working on the emotional aspect of this. Really controlling your emotions. You're still going through post-acute withdrawal, so it's going to take time for that to level out. Then the third year, you're going to focus on the psychological part, which is what causes me to want to go out. So I have a bad day, something happens, and my first thought is to go out and use. So we have to work on that. Then the fourth year is when we're going to really work on our spiritual life. That this idea that I'm not the center of the universe, that there is a power that's greater than me. And then for most people, what you're going to do is you're going to start endeavoring on that journey of, but what does higher power mean to me? It could be overtly religious. It could be something else spiritual. It could be becoming involved in the community. And you're going to work on that. But I think, Lillie, that's where that shift occurs. That fourth year, when you start finding out you discovering what the power is for you, that's where that metaphysical shift occurs. Now, I'm giving you sort of a generality of the 5-year cycle. And you might say, well, what's the fifth year? The fifth year is when you realize that all these things work in conjunction with one another. We have to make sure we don't damage our bodies physiologically, keep our emotions in check, the psychological part, and then we're always working on the spiritual part. And then the fifth year is when we realize that cycle works together. But when people get to that point, that's when they start doing that other thinking. But not everybody's there. And not everybody's aware of that. And being human beings and being flawed human beings, we are at times going to be self-centered because as addicts, we are inherently self-centered. That's part of addiction, right? And so no one's perfect. And please do not think for a minute that I'm constantly thinking, what can I do for the next person? What can I do for my neighbor? What can I do for my wife? You know very well I can be very self-centered. You know very well that I'm flawed. You remind me of that every day, don't you? Right? You remind me of that. But we're striving for that in recovery, right? Progress rather than perfection. Progress. That's what we're looking for. Now, some people are better at that than others. Some people are more spiritually, we call it spiritual fitness, right? Some people are more spiritually fit than others. So you're not going to see that perfectly because you might say, Mike, man, I go to a lot of meetings and there's a lot of guys that aren't doing what you're saying. I know, I get that because everybody's in different phases of their recovery and people kind of go in and out of recovery too, as far as their physical. I mean, I know I certainly do. There are days when I'm much more spiritually fit than others, right? And there's factors that go into that. We have bad days at work. Oh, trust me, I have my days where I'm like just hanging on by the the nails, and other days where I feel pretty good.
So, but all in all, like you said, what was the you repeat for me the topic about what was it again?
The statement?
Mm-hmm.
Addiction is the only disease where you're better off having had it than when you started.
Okay, so it's the only disease that you're better off having had it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Talk to me a little bit more about that when you say it's better that you've had it. So, I mean, you've been steep in recovery. You're a big AA type person. You work in a detox unit, right? So you're constantly helping people all the time. And then you said every person is in different places in their life. So what about the average person that could be listening and they're not doing all this stuff, but they want to be in long-term recovery? So what would you say to that person, based on the statement that you made, that they want what you want, right? But then they're not you. So are there certain things that are, like you talked about the 5 cycles or the 5-year cycle, but can you give some steps or things to be aware of in order for that statement to be true?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, if you're honest with yourself, and I'm saying this not in judgment because I was this person, okay? Because I've done this. I think a lot of people are kind of showing up to meetings. I think when it comes to recovery programs, and it could be any program, it doesn't have to be AA, it could be NA, it could be Al-Anon, Dharma, Celebrate Recovery, Smart Recovery, any of them. I think sometimes people, we think that because we show up, we're working the program. And, we just had the Olympics, on TV. In fact, as we speak here tonight, this is the last day of the Winter Olympics here in 2026. And I don't, a lot of people will watch sporting events, whether it's a football game or the Olympics. And I'm just thinking of the Olympics because it was just on. And you think, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be great? I'd love to be an Olympic bobsledder. I'd love to be that skier. I'd love to be that ice skater. I'd love to be on the hockey team. And people say that, and they want, because what happens is you see like the hockey team won gold, and you think, I'd love to have a gold medal. Why can't I have a gold medal? These guys are so lucky. They're out there. They have a gold medal. But what we don't realize is that the people on that team paid a heavy price, and they did a lot of work to get to where they were. And the bottom line is, most of us want what others have, but we aren't willing to do what they did to get it. Does that make sense? And I think recovery is the same way. If you want to have that spiritual awakening, after all, the 12th step tells us that having had a spiritual awakening, we carry the message to other alcoholics that continue to suffer. Having had a spiritual awakening, so that's the goal, right, is the spiritual awakening part of this. Because that's really what we're doing. Having had that spiritual awakening, we are working with other people, carrying that message. But how do we get that spiritual awakening? We do a lot of work. There's a lot of work. The work isn't done in meetings, really. When you think about it, when you go to meetings, that's where you hear the message. That's where you hear the tools. That's how you learn about the program. You learn about the steps. You learn about the tools that people use to get well. It's outside of the meetings that you put those tools into practice. It's kind of like I can watch a video of somebody doing an exercise or stretching or yoga or whatever. That video is showing me what to do. But it's not doing it for me. I have to do that exercise if I want the benefits of that exercise, right? I can look at a training plan for a marathon, but studying that training plan every day does not prepare me to run a marathon. I have to do the training in that plan to run the marathon. And that's what recovery is all about. But most of us don't do that. I know it was not until I started doing the work in the plan and used the tools and put them into practice that spiritual awakening occurred. You have to do it. This is a program of action. But most of us really aren't doing that if you think about it. I think most of us think that we're doing much more than we actually are. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But in that work, in that process, and when you do that work, that's when that spiritual awakening occurs. And you can't put a date or time on it. There's just a day where you wake up and it seems like everything just makes sense. And I think it's just a lot of the different things that come together, and then you're just like, one day you wake up and you go, it makes sense. Like that fifth year 5 in that 5-year cycle, somewhere in there, Okay, and again, I'm just using an average. It can be sooner, it can be later, it can be never. But it seems like, I know for me, it was like in that year 5 mark, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it. But it comes through a lot of work.
So, Mike, when you say, I agree with you, right? Because what I'm thinking is, you went to several meetings. I mean, you had multiple slips and multiple relapses prior to you finally, what I call, getting it. And for the person who's struggling, in your particular case, because you did have a lot of slips and relapses, what was going on for you? Because I'm sure it was very frustrating for you. Just like I'm sure, like the Olympians, right? We only see when they're competing. But
you see the end result.
Yeah. But
you don't see the process
right. But
to
there
get
was,
there.
Right. So there was, like you said, there was a lot of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of relapses. There was a lot of slips. And so we don't see the multiple falls and getting themselves up and injuries that they had along the way. We only see
constant training,
right,
yeah.
Right. So now I'm thinking about a person because I'm always thinking about not just us, right? You're already been in recovery, but for you to get to the point where you're coming out of it, but someone's in the throes of it, and maybe they're thinking, yeah, I want recovery, and I know but it's either too hard, or maybe they think, oh, I've got this. What is the realistic view that one should take to get through the other side?
Yeah, so there's an old adage, and I know it's a throwaway thing, and people here, and if you've ever been to AA meetings in particular, and again, I think all of the types of meetings have sort of their form of this, and I hear people say, God, I hate those little one-liners. I hate those little phrases that they have. But I'll tell you, I think you'll get, if you stick around long enough, I think you'll get to the point where you like them, because all these little throw-off phrases actually have a lot of meaning behind them, and they're true. And one of them is time takes time, okay? And one day at a time, okay? And I think you have to realize that you can't go to a meeting and look at somebody. You can't like come into our unit, because every once in a while a patient will look at me and they'll go, but look at you. You got your coat on. A lot of times I'm wearing a tie, and they're like, you got it all together. What the hell do you know? You don't know what I'm going through. And what I always tell them is, you don't know that. You have no idea what I went through. You're seeing me today. Okay, just like the Olympic athlete, you're seeing them on the podium. You didn't see them when they were training day after day, and the injuries and the falling down and the mistakes and the grind. That if you ever watch a YouTube video of recently there's on Netflix, there's some shows, one's called Quarterback and one's called Receiver, and it's kind of chronicling the life of a professional football player. And you think, man, I'd love to make the millions of dollars that this guy's making, and I bet it's glamorous. He's got the nice house, he's got the cars and all that. And then when you watch the video, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know that not a very glamorous life, because it's a grind. It's just, there's really nothing. Then you start to realize, yeah, there's a reason why these guys are paid that kind of money, because it's just a grind. But recovery is that way. But I do know this. Anyone that has started, and any of you listening, if you've ever started training for something, you've either not gone to the gym before, or you haven't not been to the gym for a while, or you haven't run in a while. What's it like when you start out? Tough, right? It's just tough. And in the beginning, you're just like, I'm going to run, I'm going to walk. Maybe I'm going to walk more than I run if you're starting a running program. But the key, how you get into a running program, is you just start. And it sucks. And every day you get out and you do it, and you hate it, and it hurts, and it sucks, and you want to give up, but you just keep going on, and you're consistent. But the key is consistency. Right? Because then you start seeing the progress, and then before you know it, then you're starting to set bigger goals. You're running further distances. Maybe you're going to run that distance a little bit faster. You begin to enjoy it. And anyone that has gotten into a workout, what happens? You have a hard time starting, But then once you get started and you've been doing it for a while and it becomes part of your routine, then if an injury comes up or you're on travel or life happens and you have to go for a week. And anybody that's gotten into a running program or a workout program and you're very consistent, and then a life event comes up and you have to miss like a week, then what is it? It's like, then you go nuts. I can't work out. I can't run. We've heard of that runner's high before, right? You get somebody that runs all the time and then they can't do it, and then it drives them nuts. But that's not how they started. And recovery is the same way. And you hear people say that, where you're going to meetings and life is going well and you're working a recovery program, then life happens and maybe you can't go to a meeting for 2, 3, 4 days and you're not going to do it. And people go, hey, I don't feel right. I have to get back to a meeting. I don't feel right. Well, it's the same sort of concept. But to go back to your original question, it just starts with, in the beginning, just like in the running, just get up, put your shoes on, get out the door and move. And that's how recovery starts. You just start with just doing it. And even when you don't want to do it, you do it. And in fact, I'll say this. When you wake up and you say to yourself, I really don't want to do this, you need to get a mindset, that is exactly the day when I should do it. Every time I say I don't want to do it, you do it anyway. And you just make that a habit. Make it a habit. Make it a habit. One day at a time is kind of like the running equivalent to one foot in front of the other. Just keep moving. Just keep moving. But focus on where you are. Don't think about what is this going to be like 10 years from now. And don't look at the person at a meeting that has 30 years, 10 years, 5 years, 1 month, 2 months. Don't look at them. Look at yourself and just say, where am I? Am I making... You are comparing you to you. Look at others to see... learn from them and learn from their experience and kind of follow their steps and, try to do the same things that they did. But you don't compare yourselves to them. Does that make sense? You compare yourself to you. Celebrate the fact that you have the amount of time that you have, but focus on where you are. Wherever your feet are, that's where you are. And that's what you want to focus on. I know that's so cliche, but it's the truth. It really is. And you see this in Al-Anon too.
So, Mike, we talked about a number of things, right, that can bring someone to the point where life is better today than what it was before. Mm-hmm. Are there any other key points that you wanted to talk about?
I would say you don't let the daily grind of your life take you out. There's an old saying too, don't let your success take you out. And you hear this all the time. Life is going to get better. And it's going to get better because it's impossible not to get better. If you stop drinking or drugging, it is absolutely impossible for your life to get worse. Now, notice I didn't say you're not going to have problems. I didn't say that you aren't going to have challenges. And in some ways, you will have more challenges because you're not drinking or drugging. You will become more engaged in life and you'll become more engaged with other people. And whenever you're engaged with people, you're going to have inherent conflict. So I'm not saying that life is going to be without problems. I'm just saying that your problems will not involve drugs or alcohol. Okay. And that's a big thing. And that's a big plus. But as you get better, don't think then that you can rest on your laurels and go out. In other words, don't let your success take you out of the program because you always hear this. Anybody that you hear talk about how they relapse, the relapse started with the person not doing the things that got them to that place in the first place. Don't start backsliding. Don't start taking your foot off the pedal. Don't stop working the program because you got well. Always remember, you continue to go to meetings, even if you're not climbing the walls, even if you feel like you're not going to use, you are there to help other people get well, and they need to see you, and they can't see you if you aren't at meetings. But the beginning of a relapse is not participating in the program and helping other people. Maybe you are on the verge of drinking or drugging. But again, your job is to be there and to carry the message. That's your mission, and that's what you want to do. And so always be focused on that. And remember, it doesn't matter how many years you have in the program, you have to work it like it's day one, week one. That's vital. Be involved.
So I want to clarify this point because I mentioned earlier that you're steep in recovery. You're also, a therapist. When you were in the throes of your addiction, it was all about isolation. So, like you said earlier, it's like, how is life better today than it was before? Even though somebody may not be doing as much as you're doing, I'm hearing from you that one of the essential things of maintaining your recovery is this social aspect, right? Not only just helping others, it's the part of helping others because in your throes of your addiction, it was isolation. So you're saying that to be successful in your recovery, you want to maintain a social aspect.
Yeah.
It's vital to your recovery.
Yep. Yeah, it absolutely is vital. We are designed by nature to be connected to other human beings. And addiction is isolation, recovery is community. And so the idea of fellowship, the idea that we need to be with other people is important, because when I'm alone, then I go up in my head, and that's not a good thing. There's nothing good going on between these two ears, and that's true of any addict. And there's just something about working with other people and staying busy and staying connected that keeps us out of our own head and keeps us out of trouble. And so that's the important thing. I know those of you that haven't been to meetings, you're thinking, I want to go online, I want to do video meetings, I'm in a special group, like I'm a police officer, I'm a pilot, I'm a doctor, whatever the case may be, and you want to go find those specialty meetings to be around your own. So if I'm going to be around people, I want to be around my people, right? That's a horrible idea. It's not good, because that's where your addiction wants you to be. Addiction is isolation. And it's very, very important for you to be not only going to meetings, but to become involved in the meetings, to get into the center of the meetings. That is vital. And that's also why, and I'll just share with you my pet peeve, is all the online meetings. I really think they're a bad idea. They have their place, that if you literally have you can't go to a meeting any other way, okay? And I want to repeat that. You don't have the ability to go to a meeting any other way. If you're in that category, and I think that's a rare thing, not that it can't happen, but short of that, you need to be going to meetings, and you need to be meeting people face to face and working with them, because that's what we're designed to do. And everybody that I talk to tells you it's not the same thing. There's just something about being in a meeting, in a room with other human beings, talking before the meeting, talking after the meeting, that is just far different. And that is what we are designed to do. So remember, addiction is isolation, recovery is community. It's vital.
Okay, Mike. So let's close this session.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, what is the biggest key takeaway that you want folks out there to know about?
I think the key takeaway tonight is that the future looks good. Your future is going to be better than what your future would have been had you not gone through this experience in the first place. I hear a lot of people say that they are so sorry, that they have regrets over what happened. And I think it's a very dangerous thing, because we can't do anything about our past. I can't do anything about my past. You can't do anything about your past. We only have the future to look forward to us. And our future is not guaranteed, okay? All we have is right now, okay? But do know that if you've done the work, you will come out on the other end better than you would have been, than you had not had this experience in the first place. And everyone around you knows that. You are a different person, even in your workplace. Your coworkers will know there's something different about you than others, because we live a life of brutal honesty. We live a life of commitment, of service, and thinking of others. Very few people live their lives that way, but that is essential in the way that we live our lives. And most of us would have never even thought that way had we not had this experience. So to me, the key takeaway is have heart, Stay true, keep your head up, and know that life will get better, and life will get much better than you even thought that it was going to be. So that's the good news tonight. So there is good news in this.
All right, Mike, can you close us out?
Yeah. So with that, thanks for joining us tonight, and we thank you for joining. We look at this as our recovery family, and you could be doing other things right now, but you took the time to listen to this, and we really appreciate that. Take this message, spread it to anyone that you feel could benefit from this, because we want to carry the message of recovery, because we want you to get well, and we want your family to get well. Because remember, this is a family disease; it affects everybody in your orbit. You can get well because recovery is possible. And thanks again for joining us tonight. And we're going to be talking with you again next week, and we're looking forward to it. So take care, and Lillie will be with us as well. So thanks for coming on tonight, Lillie. But she'll be here next week as well. And you guys take care of yourselves. So as I always like to say, I do not represent any group, do not represent anyone other than myself. My only purpose in giving this information is to share with you what I've done, because it's helped me and maybe it will help you too. If I've said something that does not apply to you or you don't agree with, then just discard it. But try to take any information that you can use for yourself and help others as well. That's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we hope to impart the knowledge we have gained to others as well. With that, please visit our Facebook page, Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Let us know how we're doing, and let us know if there's any topic that you're interested in hearing about. We'd love to hear from you, and take care, and we'll see you next time.